presentation.
He'll be fine on the mountain.
JB and Darren on the JB and Goldwater Show.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series. Watson, touchdown. Hunter Renfrow. He got him, and it's all over. Coastal Carolina rules the roost. They win the championship. And South Carolina has won the national championship.
The Senegal baseball team has done it again, but this time the Bulldogs beat one of the top teams in the country. They are giant killers.
Get the ball advantage. He does.
Gamecocks are in the Final Four.
All right, greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon, and welcome aboard the JB and Goldwater Show, live, loud, and online, and driven by our friends and yours at Stokes Volkswagen. Find them at stokesvw.com. Find us on the JB and Goldwater app. You can download that. It's free in your phone, and you can watch and listen to our program daily in its entirety. You can always check us out if you happen to miss anything as well. Across all social media platforms at JB and Goldwater, individually at Sports Media JB, and at Darren Goldwater. 843-321-8893 is our phone number. It is also our text line. Pop us a note, and we'll make you a part of our program. Day 2, back from vacation. Yesterday was fun. Today will be as well, Darren. We're going to get into the draft and the Derby and the All-Star game. Plenty here in just a little bit. At 12:30 today, Phil Steele, the groundhog of college football, will join us. Why do I say that, right? Because when Groundhog Day comes in February, everybody knows that spring is right around the corner. When Phil Steele shows up in the summer, we know football is right around the corner. And so he's going to get into some Palmetto State stuff, some ACC, SEC, national headlines, and things like that. If you haven't ordered the magazine yet, you probably should do that. We'll have some post-conversation analysis. We'll talk about Luke Doty as well. There's a really strange pro football focus list out yesterday that says basically that Luke Doty is the 5th worst quarterback in the country. Okay. And then Gene Sapakoff is ahead at 1:30. So we got a lot to get to. We hope that you'll be a part of our program. And with that being said, Darren, I'm hearing thunder outside. Good afternoon.
It's good. At least you're not hearing feedback. I'm hearing thunder over here as well. It's fun. You said it's the second day back. It feels like we're already right back in the groove because the show yesterday, and then that rolls right into the home run derby last night, which was just so much fun to watch. I mean, it's number one, I wasn't a huge fan of the camera angles and how they did it, but the show itself and the storylines surrounding it and the type of guy that Alonso is and the Mancini story and Ohtani and Soto, there was just a lot to like about it. And the All-Star game tonight is without a doubt, without a peer when it comes to professional All-Star games. It's the only one I care about and the only one that I watch. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, it has the most meaning, and it's they do it right in the middle of the year, which is I think perfect. And I think what a lot of people miss with the All-Star game is what the non-All-Stars are doing. They get to actually go home and see their families and things like that. So I'm with you. Yeah, I thought the home run derby was awesome. I also agree that it was unfortunate not to be able to see some of them leave the yard. I thought that they maybe might want to fix that moving forward. But overall, I saw some tweets and stuff last night about, hey, this guy hit the most home runs. He didn't advance, and why not just let the 4 guys who hit the most home runs advance? But then that would take away the competition that you get throughout. I mean, you look at the results, Darren, last night, and you had a 1-run difference between Mancini and Olsen. You had a home run difference between Story and Gallo. Alonso went yard 35 times, but he had to because Salvador Perez hit 28. And then you had Juan Soto besting Ohtani 31-28 in that 3 swing round where he went yard 3 straight times, and Ohtani He missed it on the first pitch, so it was over. So I like that. I think that's what energizes the home run derby is the competition that literally begins from the first swing.
It got stale for me for a little while, but now they've changed the format, and then they've updated it again, so they're doing their best to keep this thing moving at a decent pace. I mean, it was over by around 11, if not before 11 o'clock. That. Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was over. So it was a timely, I guess, exhibition. So people who are complaining about, well, he had more home runs, and look, it's an exhibition, man. We had it set up. It's brackets. It's just like any other bracket and playoff format that we talk about on this show all the time. Right. And you got to beat your guy and then beat the next guy. So whatever. I also loved seeing Soto. I said it on the show yesterday that I thought Soto was going to do well, and I had hoped as a Nationals fan that him being in the Derby would help his swing because he hasn't had the pop power-wise that he's had, well, really last year and the year before that. He's only been on the scene a couple of years, but he hasn't been driving the ball out. He said as much as well, hoping that he can increase his launch angle a little bit and find his swing. And his 520-foot home run last night was awesome for a lot of reasons, but it was awesome.
Yeah, I was the whole StatCast thing gets me because had it been around, I tweeted this last night, 22 years ago when Big Mac was swinging the stick in the Derby in 1999. Keep in mind that was a year after Sosa and McGuire went at it in 98. And then remember, Big Mac was in that Derby up in Fenway, and every ball left the park, like the park itself was gone. So I when I hear things like, which it's true based on the evidence that they have, well, that's the longest home run we've ever seen. Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. But based on the StatCast era, yeah, okay, I get you. I get it. I got it. Whatever. Because we all like to see the big ones fly. But I could think, some of those times. I remember the Josh Hamilton year. Mm-hmm. I think some that Griffey has hit. Gosh, I think Cecil Fielder way back in the day when he was in the Derby, he hit some that still haven't landed. So we could always find some here and there if you've paid attention to the home run derby in your lifetime, basically. But it was neat. I liked watching all of them hit. They had some really great stuff. It was just so awesome to see Ken Griffey Jr. On the broadcast last night. He certainly doesn't look like Griffey anymore, but he's still the kid, man. He's still. I found myself, Darren, just kind of closing my eyes and going back to when Griffey was Griffey in Seattle. I mean, could you imagine how he would be marketed today? He was marketed back then. And just think about how things have changed. I mean, he was special. That was neat. That was really cool.
I remember Griffey very well from the All-Star game at Camden Yards. I mean, I remember seeing him, the aura. I mean, and that was back in 93, but I saw the home run derby. I saw the All-Star game that year and the fan fest. And if that personality and that backwards hat and that swag was around today, all right, Mike, I mean, the marketing possibilities are endless with social media, with God, these TikTok things that are going on. I mean, it's endless what it could be for him. And now Alonso can tie Griffey. If he can win it next year, they'll be the only people to go three-peat at the home run derby.
That's true. Yeah, it's back-to-back so far for the former Florida Gator, Pete Alonso, who is a New York Met, of course. But yeah, man, I had the Griffey gloves, I had the Griffey tee. I don't know that I ever really tried to wear my hat backwards.
Oh, I did.
We had coaches that were like, your hat goes forward in baseball. Okay.
I didn't wear it backwards playing, but I definitely rocked a backwards hat more than I probably should have.
Just walking around. Yeah, we weren't allowed to do that. We had to wear it forward at all times. But yeah, I had all the other stuff, the Griffey gloves and all that stuff. But so it was great. I thought it was great. It was very entertaining. Ohtani is a star, and I think that so he's going to get the start tonight on the mound, and he's also leading off, I think, right?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, we've never seen this before, guys. I mean, he hits 30 home runs basically last night in the home run derby. Mm-hmm. He's going to start on the mound tonight He's going to lead off. How far do you think he throws more in an inning? I don't. I think he probably gets an inning.
Yeah, I mean, most of these All-Star games one of the reasons why these are so much fun. It's because these aces get an inning. They know they get an inning. They're not going to be overworked. I mean, maybe he goes farther. I would doubt it. I can't see any way that Ohtani goes farther than an inning. He exerted a ton of energy last night. He's playing in the field tonight. I mean, enough's enough. What's interesting, he doesn't typically take BP. So that's why you saw him get tired early, because it's just not that natural for him. He just goes out and hits bombs without taking typical BP.
Dude, his swing is so sweet. I mean, it's quiet. For baseball guys out there, you understand what I'm saying, but he doesn't have a big leg kick. There's not a big launch or anything. He's just quiet and easy, throws his hands, and thing pops. I mean, it's really, really something special. Looking forward to the All-Star game, 8 o'clock tonight on Fox. And we'll kind of see how all that plays out. Again, it's the most as you mentioned, the most meaningful All-Star game out there. Posey and Acuna starters for the National League, not starting, of course, not playing. And then on the American League side of things, Mike Trout, of course, was named a starter as well, but he can't play either. So those, and there's some other names out there: Correa, Altuve, Michael Brantley on the American League side. Gosman, DeGrom, Darvish on the National League side, Mookie Betts, amongst others who have been named All-Stars, won't be playing in the game, though. We'll kind of see how it all goes, but certainly looking forward to that, and we'll have more on that on the ball game tomorrow out there in Colorado. And God bless baseball. Then it's a couple days off, and they're back on Friday?
Thursday or Friday? Yeah,
Friday.
I hate this week because after tonight, that's it. There's nothing. There's nothing for. No. It feels like a week. It's going to be 2 days, like 3 days maybe, but there's nothing. This is after tonight. This week is a terrible week in the summer.
Well, no. Hey, I will say this. I'll read it word for word. So I got a text yesterday from my good buddy Derek Scott.
Okay.
I love Derek. And I should have known. And he texted me last night. He said, "You know what week it is?" And I said, "I don't think so," with a question mark. His response was, "The Open Championship week, for God's sake."
Okay.
Derek he's because of his bloodline, he's a huge Open. You probably remember this from last year. He gets up in the middle of the night. He watches the whole thing. I mean, he doesn't miss a shot of the Open Championship. So thank God the Gamecocks aren't playing anything right now, because you'd have a pretty exhausted play-by-play guy up in the booth.
I love the Open Championship, and I won't be getting up in the middle of the night or anything, but I'll be paying attention as soon as I wake up. It's great theater, especially if the wind and the rain, especially if it's miserable on all the guys out there. But again, that doesn't start till Thursday morning. Right. So this cavernous week of 2 days or 3 days.
Well, it's 1 day. You get Wednesday off. Wednesday.
Whatever. It feels like forever.
Yeah. Well, hey, look, you could watch the NBA playoffs, but if you miss them, have no fear. The NBA will take about a week off, and then they'll play another 12-month season coming up here pretty soon. All right, to the draft yesterday. It was an active draft for the state of South Carolina. Because I really love to shine a spotlight on the young men and women that participate in athletics in this state. I'm going to mention all of these names, so bear with me. It'll take me about 2 minutes to do that. Thus far, today, of course, the draft will conclude, but through today in the state of South Carolina, or ties to the state of South Carolina, here are the names that have been called. Joe Mack in the first round, the 31st pick to the Marlins. He was committed to Clemson. He's going to sign. Cooper Kinney, same thing. We already knew about these guys. The 34th overall pick to the Rays. He had been committed to South Carolina. Bubba Chandler finally came off yesterday, and he tweeted that he's going to sign third rounder, 72nd pick to the Pittsburgh Pirates. See what the money looks like.
I'll interrupt you there. The interesting thing is Bubba Chandler and the Penn State receiver commit both taken by the Pirates. So the Pirates went and took two guys who are football, baseball, dual commits at Power 5 programs, drafted them both high, and it looks like Chandler's going to go. I'm not sure about Lonnie White yet, but it wouldn't shock me if he goes either.
I think it's smart. As a matter of fact, the draft is ongoing right now. Another commitment for South Carolina was just selected. That's Drew Baker out of Chipola College, the 11th round of the Phillies. I think it's smart. That's the old Colorado Rockies mentality. Right. They drafted Todd Helton, obviously the most famous one. They drafted the quarterback from Clemson.
Baker.
No, Kyle holy moly. How am I?
Parker.
Kyle Parker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kyle Parker. Didn't they also draft Russell Wilson? I think they did. They drafted him 1 year. I don't know if he didn't sign, but they did draft him 1 year.
The Rangers had him. I'm not sure which draft it was, but he was a Rangers property for a little while.
Okay. And there was somebody else. Somebody else at one point in time had been drafted by the Rockies. I'll have to look that up, but he was also a quarterback. So it's just pretty interesting stuff. But you're right. So we'll see what happens with Bubba Chandler. Brett Carey to the Angels in the 5th round. He's expected to sign. Dorman High School's T.J. White to the Nationals in the 5th round. We'll see what it looks like for him. He may be signing as well, probably is. Brady Allen to the Marlins. By the way, Brady Allen and Mississippi State's Tanner Allen, both drafted by Derek Jeter in the Miami Marlins. Love it. I really do. I've said for a long time, Brady Allen's going to be a big leaguer. Just the way you watch him, you forget the 279 or whatever. Don't look at that crap. This kid's he is a big leaguer. If there was anybody on that roster this year, position player wise, who's got a crack at it, it's Brady Allen. And Tanner Allen at Mississippi State to go where he went in the 5th round, that is way too low for that young man. So he's going to the Marlins as well. Thomas Farr from South Carolina, pitcher, of course, also a 5th rounder to the Reds. Wofford's Colin Davis, a 7th rounder to the Seattle Mariners. Parker Chavers, a 7th rounder to the Cubs out of Coastal Carolina. USC Upstate's Jordan Marks went in the 8th round to the Tigers. Clemson's James Parker went in the 8th round to the Mariners. A Carolina commitment, Hunter Parks out of Florence Darlington Tech. He went in the 8th round to the Reds. South Carolina's Brandon Jordan in the 9th round to the Milwaukee Brewers. That's where Jackie Bradley, of course, currently resides in center field. South Carolina's Andrew Peters to the Angels in the 10th round. Clemson's Keyshawn Askew, pitcher, of course, to the Mets in the 10th round. And the Gamecock slugger Wes Clark had his name called in the 10th round as well to Milwaukee. So we'll see what happens with all these guys. I have a feeling the large majority will more than likely sign contracts. Maybe you might miss on one or two here and there. Wes Clark is an interesting ordeal. I think that Wes Clark has a long ways to go as a pure hitter, especially professionally. Uh-huh. Now, it's not taken away from him as a player. He certainly has the pop. We know that. But he struggled against SEC arms this year. I think Wes would tell you that. And I hope that this isn't heard as criticism or anything like that. It's just this is baseball. We evaluate, and that's kind of where it is for Wes. So he could probably use another year. But, he might also come back and have the same issue and have no leverage, basically. So we'll see what happens there, but I probably expect them to sign. I haven't done any digging behind the scenes, I'll be honest with you, Darren, on any of that stuff. But it was a pretty darn good day for prospects in the state of South Carolina.
I'd be shocked if Wes Clark does not sign. I mean, what you said is true. I'll be shocked if he does not sign. I mean, he's got the opportunity to take some money to at least get into the system. There's not much more he can do at South Carolina. I mean, after the year he put together, just simply power-wise, I mean, unless he's coming back simply to chase like a national championship, but that's not what you're doing at this point. If you're Wes Clark, your goal is professional at this point, right? I mean, you made your run. You're one of the best power hitters in the country. Take your money and go. That would be my guess. I'd be shocked if he comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I would too. I'm with you. I would too. So I think South Carolina probably is going to lose him and everybody else on that list. It was the Gamecocks. 6 guys have been taken so far. That's second most in the country, folks. And I think Florida is only school that is ahead of South Carolina with 7 prospects drafted. So What does it mean? Well, I mean, it means that you got pretty good players, and a lot of them are arms, and then the position guys that we thought would probably go have gone, where everybody pretty much thought they'd go somewhere in the top 10 rounds. And so they got to replace those guys. Clemson, it looks like they're going to get Bubba Chandler. That's a big shot in the arm for Monty Lee. And
Will Taylor.
Will Taylor. Yeah, not Bubba Chandler. And so you pair him. You got Caden Grice coming back. You got some stuff going on up there. He's recruited really, really well. I'm telling you, Ralph Cemetery said this on our show a couple of weeks ago, and he didn't say it because he's pissing in the wind. He said it because he kind of talks to the head coach here and there. He knows him quite well. They've got talent, and I will not be shocked at all to see Clemson with a major turnaround next year in college baseball. And I don't think the Gamecocks are going anywhere either. I think that they'll plug and play based on what they've done from a recruiting standpoint as well, Darren. And I fully believe that in 2022, those two programs are going to be back battling for the 40 wins a year, battling each other for regional hosts and super regionals and stuff like that. I think baseball in this state is pretty safe. But when you generally, just personally speaking on it here, I've been around these drafts a long time in this state. Generally, when you see a lot of names called like that, that doesn't mean that like from a Clemson or a South Carolina, that means that the times are good. That doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, we lost all these guys, we're about to be really bad. That's not what it means. Actually, generally the years when there's nobody called, you think, oh, everybody's coming back. That's not a good sign. Generally, it's the other way, reverse of what you would think. Whereas we usually look at it and say, oh, they have to replace this guy and this guy and this guy. Oh my gosh, they're going to be terrible. That's not the case in baseball, actually. In South Carolina, at least, as I've discovered over the last 15 plus years, when you replace a lot of talented guys, your program's in pretty good shape. And I think that's what it will mean for both Clemson and South Carolina.
History tells us that, yes, if they're not replaced and if the two teams, Clemson and Carolina, are not battling for 40 wins, both those fan bases are going to be having issues, because if Clemson's not at that level, then we got an issue over there at Clemson. And if South Carolina's not at that level, then it's going to be at least seen as some type of a dip, and there's going to be some consternation on both sides. One name we didn't mention who has not been drafted, there was a thought for a little while that Daniel Brooks, who's a big old dude, 6'8", over at Bishop England High School, right around where we are, there was a thought for a little bit. There were rumblings of early, top 2-3 rounds. He hasn't been drafted, and he's a College of Charleston commit. So This is a 6'8" dude who can pump it into the mid-90s, who can also swing it a little bit. And this could be a good get for Chad Holbrook if he makes it to campus.
Oh, that's an enormous get for Coach Holbrook. He's a kid who you don't ever, at least I don't ever want to predict that somebody's going to come in and do this, that, and the other. But Darren, he's certainly a young man who probably will step on campus and have every opportunity to start on the weekends for the College of Charleston. And that's nothing against the guys that are currently there, but you're right. I mean, he's a difference maker for the Cougars program if he gets to campus. Nobody's completely out of the woods yet. Again, some things will kind of change here and there from a financial standpoint as to who gets what and this, that, and the other. I am looking at the draft right now, and I think is it 10? Let me see. Yeah, once you get through the 10th round, they stop issuing approximate pick values,
slot values.
Yep. So, all that can change. I mean, for instance, Wes Clark's slot value from a financial standpoint is at right around 150 grand, 145. But that can certainly change, and he has some he has leverage, like we were mentioning. So that I would probably predict a number like that probably to go up just a little bit.
One other thing I noticed too, just going through some of the stories yesterday, we were talking about the difference in you don't have to show up in class now in college. It's August 1st. It's August 15th. We were both kind of circling that date. I guess I was on one side, you were on the other side. It's August 15th that it's at like midnight, either on the the night of the 14th into the 15th or the night of the 15th, but that's the date now.
Okay. All right. Perfect. All right. About a minute left here, and then we got to hit a timeout. Phil Steele will join us in less than 5 minutes on our program to talk about his magazine here in 2021 and take a gander at the great state of South Carolina's football landscape and, of course, across the country as well. Gene Sapakoff is ahead at 1:30. We'll also talk coming up at the top of the 1 o'clock hour about some of the things we discussed with Phil Steele, and then also Pro Football Focus. They have basically deemed Luke Doty as not good, ranking him about 125th out of 130 quarterbacks across the country. I've got some numbers to compare that to against some of his peers in the Southeastern Conference, and so we'll kind of get into some of that as well. We hope that you'll be around for that conversation. It is lunchtime, and it might be a rainy lunch day, so if you would like to have something delivered, get on the delivery app that's in your phone, whether it's DoorDash or Postmates or Uber Eats, whatever. DB's Cheesesteaks is on that app, and they'll drop it off at your doorstep. It's a great time to order the best cheesesteak in town, voted 2 years in a row by all of the readers and many of our listeners in the Charleston City paper. Charleston's choice #1, DB's Cheesesteaks. DB'sCheesesteaks.com. Don't forget, try the buffalo chicken cheesesteak, and never forget the boardwalk fries with any order you place at DB's in Avondale in West Ashley.
It's French Fry Day. It's National French Fry Day. So if you're going to do that, then really don't forget the fries.
It's a great point. Yeah, it's National French Fry Day, and they pile them in there. So what are you waiting on? I don't know. We're waiting on Phil Steele. We're going to hit a timeout. When we return, the groundhog of college football. I wonder what he's going to think when I call him that. Will join us right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with zero down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump?
Strike two.
If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with zero down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to VCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes VW.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right, local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All three locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clemens Ferry Road. Okay, what's going on today, huh? Anything to talk about?
All right, greetings and a good Monday afternoon. Greetings and a good Tuesday afternoon. Greetings and a good Wednesday afternoon, and welcome aboard. All right, greetings and a good Thursday afternoon. Greetings and a good Friday afternoon, and welcome aboard. About 12:30 on a Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. It looks like a rainy Tuesday afternoon here in the Low Country of South Carolina. The Post Courier's Gene Sapakoff's ahead at 1:30 this afternoon. Looking forward to speaking with him. But first, the prognosticator of all prognosticators.
Yes, but I'll save the wonderful intro. We're waiting on him. He should be here in about one more minute.
Okay, all right.
So before we have this wonderful, you're the greatest thing, we got to make sure he hears it.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just hold off on that. Darren will let me know when we're ready to go with Phil Steele, and we'll plug him in to our program. Monitoring again the draft, as we mentioned just a little bit ago. It's going at breakneck speed now, as they are through basically the top 10 rounds and about halfway through or so the 12th round. So any notable names that come up as it pertains to the state of South Carolina, as soon as we catch it, we'll pass it along to you, at least until we're off the air at 2:00 this afternoon. Again, yesterday, a great day for baseball in South Carolina, with all those names all those names we mentioned earlier going in the draft. It is National French Fry Day, and as I mentioned, maybe DB's cheesesteak is your choice, but one of the things we'll also get into in a little while is who does have the best French fry. I used to think it was McDonald's. I don't think that anymore. Like you never loved it.
I mean, they're good.
Oh, dude, that was the universal French fry. You were never a McDonald's French fry guy?
I was never really a McDonald's French fry guy. No.
Press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
That doesn't sound like Phil Steele.
Yeah, it will be right now. It's the interesting things that we got to get through just to make sure that we've got everything dialed up and perfectly ready to go. I mean, if we're going to have Phil Steele on and you're going to give him a brand new nickname, then he may as well, make sure we got him on.
That's a good point.
You guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there's Phil Steele. Hey, man, how are you?
Brand new nickname, huh?
Yes. Are you ready for this?
I don't know if I am or not.
I think you're going to like it, Phil. I really do.
Okay.
I have dubbed you the groundhog of college football.
Okay.
Because when your magazine emerges in the summer, we know college football is right around the corner. How is that any different from Groundhog Day in the spring?
I love it. And, I pretty much go into a burrow for 7.5 months putting out the magazine. So I don't mind that at all. That sounds
good. Well, I was hoping that you wouldn't hang up the phone on us. So I appreciate you not doing that. Well, Phil, welcome back. We spoke with you last year and really glad to have you again. Well, you know what? Now that you've said that, what is the more stressful part of the job for you? Is it putting the magazine together, or is it doing the 10,000 interviews that you do to follow?
Oh, this is relaxing and fun. I get to talk football all day long. The magazine, I mean, there is just so much information in the magazine. I think I counted up the words and the numbers one year, and there are about 1 million words and numbers in the magazine. And I got to make sure, I mean, if we're 99% accurate, what is that, 10,000 typos? So we can't have that in the magazine. We have to be 99.9% accurate. Every we go through a 3 write-through process of the magazine, and everything's on a deadline for the entire 7.5 months. The first write-through, second write-through, third write-throughs after I talk to about 110 of the 130 head coaches out there. Then we do another complete write-through of the team and get it all in order. And at the very end, it's just deadline. So a lot of long hours, a lot of deadline. Clearly, this is my fun time of the year, guys.
Well, it is fun for all of us because people like you and you specifically are getting us ready for football season. I do, though, have a question about the future of the magazine. We have a changing world in college football, college athletics in general. What are you going to do? How are you going to handle like the transfer portal? What if all of a sudden a bunch of kids are moving around in August? How does that affect you, and how do you adjust?
Well, the good thing is, the way I understand it, is that this year, for example, you had until July 1st to enter the transfer portal in order to be able to play this year. And next year, you have until May 1st to enter the transfer portal to be able to play next year. Now, there's still a lot of players in the portal that can play this year as long as they entered it prior. They will join the teams. But the one big thing we did this year, guys, was that we went to the press on June 15th. Now, we normally go to the press at the end of May. I think those other magazines went to the press. They had to be like the end of April, the start of May. But we went to the press on June 15th. Now, let me give you an example. Luke McCaffrey was at Nebraska last year, and he transferred to Louisville. Well, lo and behold, it's the end of May, and Luke McCaffrey enters the portal again. So now I'm like, okay, we're never going to find out where he went to. We're going to the press in 2 weeks. June 13th, Coach Bloom-Rice gives me a call and says, Phil, we signed Luke McCaffrey. He's coming here. So we were able to rewrite the projected starting lineup and throw him in as a starter, rewrite the quarterbacks, rewrite the offense, rewrite the forecast, all in those last frantic final days. So we basically have every transfer up to date through June 15th, and we've only missed out on a couple of them. And I think it's going to get easier next year with that May 1 deadline as opposed to July 1.
That is fantastic. I'm sure many out there are relieved, because if it's not for Phil Steele, then we don't know what we're yelling about in the bleachers that we sit in our respective ballparks, Phil. So we're gonna drive around the state of South Carolina, and then we'll branch out from there. Well, let's start with the perennial these days national title contenders, the Clemson Tigers. Last year a little bit of a different situation, clearly. With COVID, divisions were eliminated in the ACC. Notre Dame became a part of it. That's not the case this year. All back to normal, it seems. DJ Uiagalelei is the quarterback. From a broad perspective, a broad landscape type conversation here, give us your analysis of the 2021 Clemson football team.
Well, believe it or not, I've got them the favorites in the ACC, and I've got them making the playoff this year. Can you believe
no.
that?
No way.
Yeah. So I'm going to be pretty popular in Clemson, huh?
I think so.
As will every other magazine out there. But anyway, I like the talent that Clemson has this year. Starts with my number 1 rated defensive line in the country coming into the year. My number 3 set of linebackers, number 8 DBs. In fact, when I look at Clemson's defense, I rated number 2 in the country. Offensively, you touched on DJ Uiagalelei. He got in 2 starts last year, which I like, so he's got some experience, and they put up 38 points per game with him as a starter. I think the receiving core has improved with the return of Justin Ross. The offensive line is more veteran than last year. And when you look at the schedule, they're going to be a double-digit favorite in every single game this year, with the exception of Georgia, which is a legitimate game right out of the box. I love that. I do think 2 teams could potentially challenge them in the ACC title game, and that would be either Miami of Florida or North Carolina. But Clemson's still ahead of those, and I've got them making the playoff this year, shockingly.
Yeah, it's a big surprise. Really out on a limb there. We all are these days. Yeah, it's that defensive line is I think it's a great talking point, Phil, because it does take you back, right? A couple of years when the so-called Power Rangers, we all know that group, and folks are beginning to compare both of them together, but we'll have to kind of wait and see how it all works out. How do you compare those 2 defensive lines?
Well, that defensive line, I think, was made up of a bunch of seniors. This one has got a lot of true freshmen. Well, they're called true freshmen. It's amazing we have true freshmen like Brian Breezy and Miles Murphy, who started all those games last year, and yet they're still true freshmen. So they're really sophomores, but they're labeled true freshmen. I think that's the only difference would be the age. I think the talent level is right there with what they had a couple years ago, and I do rate them the number 1 defensive line in the country.
The 2021 college football preview, the best one out there, Phil Steele. When you speak to Coach Sweeney, what does he say? What is his how has he been throughout the summer? As I'm trying to figure out the right word to ask you here, but how does he feel about this group compared to others?
Well, now I said I talked to 110 of the 130 head coaches out there. It might have even been 111, 112, but roughly 110. Did not talk to Coach Sweeney this year.
Oh, no. Do you need us to make a call for you, Phil? Or?
Yeah, could you do that for me?
Darren, you'd be better off doing that than I would.
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. But when you look at the Tigers this year, right? You just laid out their defensive line, you laid out their linebackers, you laid out the fact that they should be head and shoulders above 2 teams that could potentially challenge them. But on a bigger scale, Clemson and their fans aren't looking at the ACC and the ACC title and being in the playoff. That's assumed. On a bigger scale, have they closed the gap that we saw at the end of last year with Alabama?
Yes, they definitely have. I think when you look at Alabama, you look at what they lost. They lose a first-round draft pick, quarterback, 2 first-round draft pick receivers, a high draft pick at the running back, 3 offensive linemen. I don't think their offense will be quite as potent as it was last year. Meanwhile, with Clemson, I know Trevor Lawrence is gone, Travis Etienne is gone, but as I mentioned, I think the offensive line and receiving core are actually better than last year. So I don't think the drop-off on offense will be as much. And so, yes, they are clearly one of the main players in college football.
If they lose that game to Georgia, Phil, in your estimation, how much does that impact their chances of making the college football playoff?
Probably not at all. If they win the ACC with just 1 loss this year. Now, if Georgia was to be, let's say Alabama loses one game all year and Georgia loses one game all year. Ohio State runs the table and Oklahoma runs the table. Then it might be a factor, but what are the odds of something like that happening? Other than that, I think Clemson still easily makes the playoff, even with the loss to Georgia.
Phil Steele, 1240 on a Tuesday afternoon here on the JB and Goldwater show. You did mention North Carolina and Miami as potential contenders to the Tigers in the ACC. Give us your evaluations of both those programs.
Well, at North Carolina, the two things that I really like this year, first of all, would be Sam Howell. I mean, he is one of the top quarterbacks in the entire country and well worth the hype. And then their defense is going to be much improved this year. I mean, these guys look good getting off the bus. They've got size, they've got speed, and this is the first year they've got a veteran unit for coach or for their defense. I think Jay Bateman does a good job there. You're going to see him do a great job this year. They allowed 401 yards per game. I expect big-time improvement there. And then the schedule also sets up nice for North Carolina. They avoid Clemson. They get Miami and Florida at home. They do have to play Notre Dame on the road, but it's not a conference game. And that's the reason them hosting Miami is the reason that I've got them winning the Coastal. I know if you watch last year's North Carolina-Miami game, you think that those two teams weren't even close because North Carolina just ran the ball down their throat and beat them 62-28. But I asked both Coach Diaz and Coach Brown, what happened? And neither one could tell me what happened in that game. So generally a coach has an inkling of it. It was just one of those snowball games that got away. Now with Miami, Coach Diaz has taken over the defense this year. They've got 9 returning starters. Offensively, De'Ara King, if he's back 100% healthy, which I think he will be, it's a big plus. They've got Cam Harris, Donald Chaney in the backfield, some dangerous receivers. They had Oklahoma wide receiver Charleston Rambo, which is probably the one key transfer they needed, and they got him. And they go 8 to 10 deep on the offensive line, which is something they haven't had and did not have last year. In fact, they allowed just 2 sacks in 200 scrimmage snaps in the spring. I think when you look at Miami, North Carolina is going to be the big game, October 16th, and then they also play some team Alabama in the opener, which they might be an underdog in.
Yeah, they could be an underdog in that game. You mentioned the schedules. You mentioned Miami, how them and North Carolina do play in Chapel Hill. That game is mid-October, the 16th, as a matter of fact. Clemson doesn't play either one of those teams, and they also don't play Notre Dame. And you had mentioned their schedule just a moment ago. I mean, once you get through Georgia, I don't want to say it's a breeze, Phil, but comparatively to the teams that will be competing for a national championship, it's a breeze.
Double-digit favorite in every single game. The closest line I have for them the rest of the year is a 10-point favorite at Pitt. Because Pitt does have a habit of upsetting the big boys. They beat Clemson a couple years ago. And, of course, it's in Pittsburgh. The weather doesn't figure to be great potentially. So that would be probably the closest line I have on the schedule after that Georgia game.
We'll get to South Carolina in a minute, and then we'll branch out across the country. But there is another team in this state, that made some noise last year, the Chanticleers of Conway, Coastal Carolina. Of course, looking to stay on the map. They've got the Citadel to open their 2021 schedule on September the 2nd, and then they have that Kansas program again. I'm sure Kansas is tired of seeing Coastal as well. We'll go back to last year and then branch forward to this year. Jamie Chadwell's still there. He was in contention for some jobs, maybe most notably the South Carolina job itself. Still got a great quarterback, Grayson McCall up there. So assess what happened last year and how that can transition here into 2021 as maybe a G5 type contender.
And going over the team with Coach Chadwell, I used to, in 2019, I called them Mr. 3-9 because they had been a great team. They had been a double-digit winner in the FCS, and then they decided to redshirt the entire team and move up into FBS in 2017. And then their head coach took a sabbatical, and all of a sudden, Jamie Chadwell was the head coach for that mess and went 3-9. So I used to kid him about that because it was really a setup where 3-9 was actually a good record that year. It could have been 2-10 or something like that. And he's done a great job building this team. He went 5-7 in his first year. There was no one in the country that saw Coastal Carolina coming last year, but that just tells you a little something about A, the way he's building the team, and then B, what happens when you get some early wins and beating Kansas on the road which they probably beat even worse than 38-23. They had a huge lead in that game. Then beating Louisiana, all of a sudden they gained a little more confident, and they knocked off the number 21 Louisiana. Then they all of a sudden Georgia Southern. Once again, the Georgia State game is one of those games you can't explain. I asked both head coaches. Neither one could figure out 51-0. I mean, Coastal was only a 3-point favorite, but then just played great down the stretch. The BYU game hastily arranged 2 games beforehand. They tackled the BYU player at the goal line. But I thought it was a fantastic year for Jamie Chadwell and company, and they're dangerous. They got everybody back, 19 returning starters, Grayson McCall at quarterback. The 2 big losses and the 2 biggest things I'm concerned with there, C.J. Marable at running back and then Terry and Jackson at the defensive end. Those are 2 superstar players that are both gone this year. But I think Coastal Carolina's season comes down to October the 20th when they play App State on the road. They get to avoid Louisiana. And if they can knock off App State on the road, they've got a great shot at not only repeating as their division champs, but also running the table this year.
That's a great point. That's turned into a nice rivalry in the Sun Belt. But I'll say this, though. I'm not a fan of this school, but I'll say this on behalf of their rabid base. Don't tell Georgia Southern that that's the only game to circle, because Coastal does have to head south to take on the Eagles on November the 6th, Phil. We got to be careful there. We got fans around here, okay?
Yeah, I only am a 3-point favorite in that game, so I do think it is going to be a tight one because Georgia Southern, as you mentioned, the way they run that option, they're very good.
Yeah, absolutely. Phil Steele, the groundhog of college football, boys and girls, close your eyes. It's going to be here. He's like the groundhog in February. We all know that spring's on the way. Now fall's coming. Okay, let's get to South Carolina. The Gamecocks obviously have Shane Beamer now firmly in place. Recruiting has been unbelievable, to put it calmly, to be honest with you, over the last 3 weeks, especially for Carolina football. Last year, not good, Phil. It really fell apart halfway through the year with Will Muschamp. Only 6 combined wins in the last 2 years. But they do return some pieces. And I know many out there maybe don't pay as close as attention, but that's your job. What do you see in the Gamecocks here in 2021 in the first season under head coach Shane Beamer?
Well, and usually when you talk to a new head coach, you get a good take of how they feel about the talent that they inherited. And Coach Beamer likes the talent he inherited.
Yeah.
Very happy. And the defensive line is an area of strength. I mean, I've rated them the number 12 defensive line in the country with Birch, Pickens, Sandage, Engbar, Ellis, Hemingway. They've got a lot of good players on the defensive line. They go about 3 deep, and it's clearly the strength of the team. And if you have a strong defensive line, that helps those other 2 units on defense as well. Then you look at the offensive line. Now, last year they allowed the most TFLs in the SEC. So you would figure the coach isn't happy about his offensive line, but he actually likes what he inherited here. A guy like Dylan Wanham at right tackle, Turrentine at the left tackle spot. I think both those guys are NFL caliber players, and we're going to see a better offensive line. Let's face it, last year they were 2-2 at one point, coming off a big win over Auburn, and then the season sort of snowballed on them. And then you let go your coach, and all of a sudden it's chaos, especially in a COVID year. I think we'll see him better. And then how about that running back core? Kevin Harris, Marshawn Lloyd, Zaquandre Wright. I think if they get good quarterback play, we're going to see a vastly improved offense this year. And Luke Doty is a guy that I like what I saw out of him at the end of last year when he played as a true freshman. Now, South Carolina's got a killer schedule this year. They're going to be an underdog at Georgia. They'll be an underdog at Tennessee, at Texas A&M, Florida, at Missouri, Auburn, Clemson. If you're a South Carolina fan, you need to be 5-2 week 7. And if you are 5-2 week 7, don't get all fat and happy, because there are 5 games you're going to be an underdog in down the stretch. But I think South Carolina, if they can pull an upset or 2, could get to a bowl game this year. But I didn't call for it in the magazine.
Phil, you've been doing this forever, and you know the Southeastern Conference, specifically the question I'm about to ask you, inside and out. In your experience, in your expertise, you mentioned both lines of scrimmage for South Carolina. What does it generally mean for teams in this league when they really are capable of competing up front in the trenches?
Yeah, and it's not just the SEC. It's pretty much all the way around college football, NFL. If you're strong at the line of scrimmage, you can win a lot of games. It makes as I mentioned, if you have a great defensive line, it makes your linebackers better. It makes your secondary better. Your secondary doesn't have to cover as long. So, I mean, that is huge. And then offensively, if you're opening up holes for the running backs, they look great. And if you're not allowing the sacks, and your quarterback looks better. So I think the line of scrimmage is something I've always put a prime benefit and a prime factor on in my preseason analysis of a team. And that's part of the reason where the experience chart in the front of the magazine, we list, offensive stats coming back, defensive stats coming back, but we also list offensive line career starts, which I think is a huge stat when you're looking at an offensive line. And South Carolina's got 84 career starts back on the offensive line.
Wow. I didn't even realize that. That's a fantastic stat. Kevin Harris, a guy last year who obviously had to shoulder the load. They literally couldn't throw the football. They didn't have any wide receivers to really catch it, Phil. You saw him play. They had more balls hitting him in the helmet than the hands at times. And so obviously it kind of became one-dimensional. And he's a guy who's certainly on radars this season. You mentioned all those starts for the offensive line. But it's going to be a little bit more predictable. Hey, this is Kevin Harris. Marshawn Lloyd's there as well, and we all know he's talented, and they're going to get a lot of carries. Zaquandre White is probably my X factor for the Gamecocks. But where do you rank Kevin Harris amongst the best tailbacks in college football, coming off of that almost 1,200-yard season, knowing all that we know about how he accomplished that?
Yeah, and like you mentioned, what he did last year was simply amazing. You have to put him in the top 10 heading into the season, especially, playing on a 2-8 team, rushing for 1,138 yards in just 10 games. That's almost mind-boggling. And you got to like the fact that this guy can run between the tackles. He's a bell cow. He did everything. Yet he can not only run inside, he can get outside and move, and that's good. And he can also really catch, which is important. So he's an all-around running back. I don't think we're going to see the same amount of yardage per game that we saw last year because of the presence of Marshawn Lloyd and Zaquandre White. But I think overall, this South Carolina run game is going to be tough to stop, especially with that offensive line.
PhilSteele.com is where you can order your magazine if you haven't done so. You said you don't have the Gamecocks in a bowl game. We certainly always encourage everybody to read the magazine. But where do you have Carolina in the pecking order of the SEC East?
I've got them tied for fifth. I think when you look at the SEC East, Georgia to me is the clear-cut favorite. Love the talent, love the schedule. They only have 3 SEC road games this year, all against first-year head coaches, South Carolina, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. Florida, on the other hand, has got a tougher schedule. They draw Alabama and LSU out of the West. Meanwhile, Georgia avoids Alabama, LSU, and Texas A&M. And Florida also only has 3 SEC home games because one of their home games is in Jacksonville against Georgia. So I've got them coming in second. Then I think you go with the more experienced teams with more experienced head coaches with Kentucky and Missouri right there. And I think that's going to be a key battle for third place. And then I've got South Carolina coming in fifth, right behind those 2 veteran teams with the veteran coaches.
Phil, this is so interesting. If you ask me today who's going to play for the SEC championship, Bama and Georgia would be my picks. But when you look at their schedules, Alabama, even though they might be the best team in college football, they actually have more roadblocks than Georgia does. I think Bama's path to get there is much more difficult than the Dogs.
I'm going to agree with you 100% on that. When you look at Georgia, they have my number 3 rated defense in the country. They got JT Daniels at quarterback. And once they get past Clemson in the opener, they're going to be favored in all the rest of their games this year. Meanwhile, Alabama, Miami's not going to be easy in the opener. They're going to be a huge favorite. They're probably going to be favored by about 3 touchdowns in that game, but they have to go to the Swamp. They have to play Mississippi State with the Cowbells. They have to play LSU at home, and LSU is much more talented this year. Auburn on the road in the Iron Bowl, but the game I got circled during the regular season is Texas A&M, and Jimbo Fisher's done a great job recruiting there the last 4 years. They go 3 deep in talent across the board. And your concern with Texas A&M is the offensive line, right? Because they lose 4 starters. But talking to Coach Fisher at the end of last year, and then once again, the post-spring, and going over the team with them, he feels this may be a more talented offensive line than what they had last year when they were a Joe Moore finalist. So they've got 5 games to get that offensive line gelling before they play Alabama. They play that game on October the 9th in College Station. And if you look at last year's game, they lost by 28 to Alabama, right? But if you really go ahead and watch the first half of that game. It was about 4 plays. It wasn't Alabama dominating on both sides of the ball. They played them dead even in the first half. 4 plays went against them, and all of a sudden, what looked like was going to be a 1-score game at the half turned into a 3-score game, and they ended up losing it. I think they're going to be confident enough that they can play with Alabama. Coach Fisher told me they were.
Final couple of minutes here with Phil Steele. You've been so gracious with your time. Thank you, Phil. We really appreciate it. LSU, is this a major bounce back season for Ed Orgeron and the Tigers?
Oh, absolutely. And last year, I think, guys, as I mentioned earlier, almost every team's got 16, 17, 18, 19 returning starters. So then I was thinking when I was writing the magazine, well, maybe the teams that were the least experienced last year will be the ones that improved the most. And you talk about least experience. We're talking LSU last season. Remember, they lost, 15 guys in the NFL, and then they had 5 opt-outs. All of a sudden, they're down to 2 returning starters on offense, 3 on defense. And they needed a shoe toss against Florida. They needed a late comeback against Ole Miss just to pull out 5-5 last year. This team's so much better. They've got 18 returning starters. They've got 2 capable quarterbacks. I like Miles Brennan. I like Max Johnson. In fact, I had a hard time picking who I was going to put as the starter this year, and they can't go wrong with either one. Deep set of running backs. They've got the talent at receiver, believe it or not. LSU, yeah, they got talent. And then the offensive line, solid. Defense will be much improved. So I think that they've got a chance of bouncing back to double-digit wins this year. I rank the West, Alabama, A&M, LSU. But LSU gets A&M at home in the final game of the season. So that's going to be a big-time game in deciding the standings.
Is that the most difficult division in college football? The West?
Is that a shock? Yeah. Especially when you get to the bottom. Arkansas, Sam Pittman, right? I got the pick last. Last year they were an underdog in all 10 games with the first-year head coach who didn't have the benefit of spring practice. They not only went 3-7, pulling 3 upsets, they probably should have beaten Auburn last year. That was a game where Auburn had that backward pass go against them, and then Arkansas got robbed, I think, at the end. And then they had 2 other games where LSU was a game that I thought, depleted as they were on the defensive line, they played well. And then, of course, Missouri was a game that they took the lead with about a minute to go in and gave up a field goal on the last play. So they could have won 6 games last year, playing 10 SEC teams as an underdog in all 10. And that's your last place team with 19 returning starters? To answer your question more succinctly, yes.
All right, this is my final question. Darren might be chomping at the bit to ask you about his Nittany line, so I'll leave the floor to him. But how many leagues out there, I would probably say outside of the SEC, which pretty much only leaves 4 other leagues here, based on your evaluations, have multiple teams that can either participate in the college football playoff or win the national championship?
Okay, Big 12, I would put Oklahoma and Iowa State in that class. Matt Campbell's done a fantastic job with Iowa State. Big 10, I would put Ohio State and a surprise team, Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin's got the possibility of getting there. If you look at their schedule, their 4 Big 10 road games are all against teams that had losing records last year. And they've played Ohio State tough in each of the last 2 Big 10 championship games. ACC, Clemson, but Miami and North Carolina have a puncher's chance in the ACC title game. Pac-12 could very well be a conference that just knocks itself out. They've got so much, 16 returning starters for Colorado is the second fewest in the conference. It's a loaded conference in that way, and they all play each other. They play 9 games. So I think the Pac-12 is going to have a difficult time getting there. And then, of course, let's see, Big 10, we touched on them all there.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you threw Wisconsin in there above Penn State. How improved? I know you think they're going to be vastly improved. How improved are they? And how improved is the Big 10 to close that gap back on the SEC as the number 2 conference in the country?
Well, I actually have Penn State my number 1 most improved team in the entire country. And you look at last year, they went 4-5. But it wasn't because they were getting outplayed at the last scrimmage. Go back to that Indiana game. They had a 488 to 211 yard edge. Now, you can't lose a game like that, but they lost it on a very controversial 2-point conversion at the end of the game. And that sort of set the tone for them early in the year when they opened up 0-5. But then they won their last 4 games, outgained opponents by 102 yards per game on the season. They do have 3 tough games. They have to play Wisconsin on the road, Iowa on the road, and Ohio State on the road. But this team is going to look much more like they were thought of in the preseason last year, which was number 7 in the country, rather than 4-5. And they are my number 1 most improved team in the country.
And that Wisconsin game is to open the season. And then, of course, they welcome War Eagle to town just a couple of weeks after. That's a really cool game, the Phil, up there in Happy Valley. It might be happy that night for Penn State fans. We'll see.
And here's one thing I want to point out. Last year, no crowds, right? This year, not only are the crowds back, I think they're going to be super fired up. I think home field advantage will be, last year I said the home field advantage will be the weakest it's been in, 20, 30, 40, I don't even know how long, because of the lack of crowds. This year, I think fans are going to be just so fired up because they were held without being able to go to the stadiums. That whiteout conditions in Penn State, look out. They're going to be a dangerous home team. Yeah.
Oh, you got the hair standing up on the arms of Darren.
Yeah.
Here we go. I'm gonna have to hear about Penn State for the next hour on this program.
I'm just hoping for 2 whiteouts here. I mean, maybe they'll get a win in there, but let's just get 2 whiteouts in there so that you can welcome back these rabid fans with 2 whiteout atmospheres.
That's what they should do. Yeah.
Yes.
No doubt. That one against Ohio State got robbed last year as far as no whiteout.
PhilSteele.com. Phil Steele's 2021 college football preview is available everywhere. Order it now. Prepare yourself for welcoming back stadiums all across the country. College football returns next month, believe it or not. Phil, you've been once again so gracious with your time. We really, really, truly cannot thank you enough. We look forward to doing this again next year. Maybe we'll check in with you prior to that. But nonetheless, thank you for all of your hard work and happy football season.
Yeah, and JB and Goldwater, always enjoy doing your show. One thing I want to point out to your listeners just real quick, and that is if you're driving around looking for the magazine, it's only available at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. Those 2 locations exclusively are PhilSteele.com. But always enjoy doing the show with you guys. A lot of fun today.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful week. And, hey, again, it's going to be here soon, so we know you're excited. We are too. Thank you, Phil.
All right, thanks, guys.
See ya.
There you go. And I guess he liked it. The groundhog of college football.
You got away.
We have seen his magazine. That means football is in the air.
You can also just do the digital version. That's what I did because I'm around the computer all the time. And if you're traveling with an iPad or your phone or whatever, the digital version's right there. So if you don't want to wait for the magazine to get shipped, just get the digital version.
As he mentioned as well, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. If there's one in your area, pop in, grab one, and get ready to go here in 2021. We're ready to go to a timeout. The national anthem is up next. We will dive back into some of what we discussed with Phil. We'll talk about Luke Doty, and we also have some updates on the Major League Baseball draft. Some popular names in this state have been selected. We'll tell you who and where, and Gene Sapakoff's ahead at 1:30 right here on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen.
Mike Morgan here for Gamecock Traditions. Baseball is going strong. You'll want to look sharp when you cheer on your Gamecocks. Under Armour, New Era, sideline hats, all with interlocking SC Baseball logo. 18 styles of $10 tees exclusively at Gamecock Traditions. Get on that email list by going to the bottom of the page, enter your email, and always be the first to know about new items as they arrive. You can also add a little Gamecock flair with house signs, garden flags, interior and yard decorations, only at one place, Gamecock Traditions.
At Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, families walk in the footsteps of our nation's heroes, the brave ones who risked their lives to defend our way of life. Home to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, and the USS Clamagore, there's more than 1 million square feet of exhibit space to roam. White Glove certified, we have several new health safety measures in place to enhance the visitor experience. Come for the day and leave feeling inspired. One of the most impressive museums in the country, located right here in Mount Pleasant. Visit patriotspoint.org for more. We'll see you soon.
Bourbon and whiskey drinkers of Charleston, Paddock and Whiskey on James Island and the Terrace Shopping Center on Maybank is your home for the finest and rarest bourbon and whiskey drinks in the Lowcountry. This is where I hang out. Go meet my friends Reed and Chris and try one of their exclusive barrel pick bourbons. They have the largest private barrel collection in the state, and let their knowledgeable staff recommend your next pour. PaddockandWhiskey.com. Let not your heart be troubled. Paddock and Whiskey is here for your next double. We're all friends around here. Paddock and Whiskey, proud partners of the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Scott Glaze, head golf professional at the Links at Stono Ferry, located on the outskirts of Charleston, South Carolina. I'm inviting you to tee it up on one of the most scenic and challenging courses in the Lowcountry. Our back nine is highlighted with 3 holes that border the Intercoastal Waterway. Visit StonoFerryGolf.com to book tee times and discover all that Stono Ferry has to offer. The Links at Stono Ferry is a former South Carolina Golf Course of the Year and is also home to the College of Charleston men's and women's golf teams. Come see us. We would love to have you. StonoFerryGolf.com.
Hi, I'm Chris Half, Public Information Officer at the Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum. We're home of the mighty USS Yorktown, USS Laffey, Flamagore, and Vietnam experience. And we're a proud partner of the JB and Goldwater Show. We invite you and your family to come see us and enjoy a day on Charleston Harbor. Visit patriotspoint.org for more information. And now, it is my honor to present the National Anthem.
Live, loud, and online.
1:05 Tuesday afternoon, July the 13th. Welcome back. Final hour of the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen, stokesvw.com. If you're driving a Stokes Volkswagen or any other car out there in the low country, be careful. The rain is coming down. This came out of pretty much nowhere off the Atlantic Ocean, and it is pouring. As a matter of fact, my wife has texted me. She's on the side of the road in Somerville.
Oh,
it's so bad up there. Can't even see to drive. So, yeah, if you're in the low country, be careful out there because it is some kind of something right now weather-wise. Across all social media platforms, you can follow us at JB and Goldwater. Head to jbandgoldwatershow.com as well. You can also follow us individually at Sports Media JB and at Darren Goldwater. Send us a text if you'd like, 843-321-8893, 843-321-8893, or utilize any chat form that might be available to you, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And Darren can make you a part of our program like Phil Steele just was. We certainly appreciate that. We're going to get back more into some football in just a moment, Darren. But first, let me shift my eyes to my right, which will be your left if you're watching, and throw out a few more names from the state of South Carolina whom have been summoned to Major League Baseball. We'll see, obviously, if they sign in the future. But over the last 30 minutes or so, Clemson lefty Mac Anglin has been selected by Darren's Washington Nationals in the 13th round, the 383rd overall pick. Wofford's Hayes Heineke selected in the 13th round, the 391st overall pick by the St. Louis Cardinals, a left-handed pitcher, 6 foot, 210 pounds. Congratulations to him. Clemson's Davis Sharpie also selected in the 13th round, 396 overall pick to Cleveland. He is the 6'4" right-handed pitcher for, or formerly maybe, for Monty Lee. And then into the 14th round we go. And Charleston Southern's R.J. Pettit, the big righty, 6'8", 300 pounds. If you've never seen this young man, he is a tall drink of water. He is headed to Detroit, the 405th overall pick in the 14th round, as I mentioned. And then I'll just go ahead and say that I am very, very proud of this young man. I've known him a long time. He's got a wonderful family. He is a great kid. And Daniel Lloyd out of South Carolina, formerly of Summerville, South Carolina, and Hanahan, South Carolina, has been selected by the Baltimore Orioles in the 14th round as the 407th pick. We'll see what Daniel decides to do. Big kid, obviously, about 6'3", 230 pounds or so. But I don't know if his parents are watching or listening or not, but if they are, Michelle and Danny, we're very, very happy for you and your family. So congratulations. And then also, I think we've got one more. Darren, I got one more here. Here it is. Yep. Our Carter Raffield from Clemson. He has been selected 14th round, 420th overall pick by the Cincinnati Reds. Another big kid, 6'4", 225 pounds. So we'll keep our eyes on that. But more names off the board today that are directly tied to the Palmetto State.
I mean, if you're Lloyd and you can make it up to Baltimore, and there's a long way to go. But, man, Camden Yards is one of my favorite places in the world. I mean, it's still true. It's one of the nicest ballparks, still is. It's heaven in that place.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with Daniel. He's a kid who, and keep in mind that South Carolina's Julian Bosnick has not had his name called, which strongly more than likely means he'll be returning to school. Mm-hmm. So for Carolina baseball fans, here's what that means. That means that in the fall, we'll see how it all unfolds. But Julian Bosnick and Will Sanders are you're looking at those guys as your front end 1-2 guys potentially. If Daniel Lloyd returns, you might have your weekend rotation already. Mm-hmm. And I would venture a guess that South Carolina fans feel pretty good about that. We all just saw what he did in the postseason. Lloyd, I'm talking about, and Bosnick. They were sensational in the regional. And we all know about Will Sanders, who's pitching for Team USA right now. So, and they're adding even more big-time arms. So, pitching staff appears to be in pretty good shape. We'll see what happens to Danny Lloyd, but wanted to make sure that we pass those along to you as well. Again, text line open, 843-321-8893. All right, so going back to what Phil Steele had to say there, I really respect Phil Steele. Obviously, I know that you do too, and so many people do because of the amount of work that he puts in. I mean, he starts. We asked him this question last year, so we didn't ask you this year, but I think he pretty much starts like early December.
Yeah, right? not long after everything is done. He's starting up, and what it's hard to categorize, with all the work that he does. But one of the things that impresses me most is the work that he does, just doing the legwork, talking to the coaches. He said he talked to 110 or 111, so he only missed about 20 of them. Dabo was one of the ones that he did not talk to, but he does that, and then he watches a ton of film. And as he's watching film, he puts out on social media, often highlighting the jobs done by announcers and production crews. And there's never a negative thing that comes out of his mouth. It is all positive. It is all just heaping praise on those who are helping him in what he is producing. So you talk a lot about, on this show at least, giving credit where it's due. Phil puts in the work, but he gives all the credit where it's due all summer long.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that stuck out to me that he mentioned. I'll start in the ACC, and I think that his pointing out of schedule discrepancies, and not in a negative way, but he was just pointing out the way the schedules lay out for both Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina, I think is something that's, as we move into August and then we start to get through the season, will become more of a talking point. Because, yes, all right, so everybody knows that Clemson opens with Georgia, okay? And for my fellow Tigers out there, this isn't a bash fest for Clemson. I'm just pointing out what he pointed out, what we all see here. Literally after that, you got nothing. I mean, there's no other way around this. It is very noteworthy if you are at least a double-digit favorite in literally every single game that you play for the whole year. And when that happens, it's because generally of 1, 2, or 3 things. One, you're really, really, really damn good. The other is your league sucks. Or the third, both.
Yeah, combination. So you've separated a little bit.
Yeah, and so here it's kind of a combination of both. I wouldn't go as far as to say as the league sucks, because we don't know that.
No.
I do think that North Carolina and Miami are pretty good football teams. I do think that there's going to be some noise made by somebody else over there. I don't know who it's going to be, whether it's going to be NC State or Louisville. Somebody's going to step up and make some noise. All right, so I'm not going down that road of the ACC is terrible, but as it pertains to Clemson's schedule, It's not good. I mean, it's Georgia, and then you got to go to South Carolina at the end of the year. They'll be at least double-digit favorites. They should have no problems with the Gamecocks. Maybe they do, but they shouldn't. And then literally there, Darren, you always look at the away games. So Pittsburgh, Louisville, NC State, Syracuse, and you say, okay, well, all right, what could happen here and there? You look at the home games. They're not going to lose any of those games. South Carolina State, Georgia Tech, Boston College, Florida State, UConn, and Wait. They're going to beat the crap out of all of them. And then when you look at North Carolina and Miami, they have to play each other, drawing Notre Dame and things like that. So it creates a little bit of an interesting scenario, and you wonder between North Carolina and Miami, who can kind of escape each other and the rest of what they have to do. And more than likely, I would say 99.9% chance of this happening, see Clemson in the ACC championship game.
I mean, this isn't breaking news that anyone with any type of just fandom, let alone knowledge of college football, will tell you Clemson's probably going to be in the college football playoff, and it's probably not going to be that challenging for them to do that, barring something unforeseen, like Uiagalelei getting hurt and not having a great backup behind him, or another, catastrophe type thing for Clemson. He did say that Miami and North Carolina have closed the gap, but that gap is still pretty wide. The thing that caught my eye, though, most was him saying if they lose to Georgia, in a direct answer to your question, how does it affect their college football playoff outlook? Probably not at all, because that's assuming, okay, you lose to Georgia, but then you don't lose again. If they get to that ACC championship game and lose, that then knocks them out in that scenario. Likely would knock them out in that scenario, depending on who then comes into play and whether it's Miami, North Carolina, or somebody else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree. And, I personally don't think they're going to lose to Georgia. I actually think they're going to beat Georgia. And I'll say that now. As we get closer, I'll stick to it. I think Georgia's really, really, really good, but I think Clemson's better. And I think that they're probably going to end up beating them. And then you're going to see more than likely an undefeated Clemson team at the end of the year. And that's nothing new. We've been watching this for the last 5 or 6 years for the most part. Mm-hmm. I do see a question there. Explain how that is any different than Alabama being favored by double digits in pretty much their entire regular season schedule. Well, I don't know that they're going to be favored by double digits in their entire regular season schedule. There's no comparison between Alabama's schedule and Clemson. It's not even remotely close.
No.
Alabama, okay, they draw Miami at the beginning of the year. That is not as difficult of a game as Clemson playing Georgia. Alabama also goes to Florida. They also go to A&M. They also go to Auburn. They host an LSU team that's not going to be what you saw last year in 5-5. That right there alone puts it head and shoulders above Clemson and most other schedules out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not even. I just asked Phil Steele this question a minute ago about Georgia and Alabama comparatively and their schedules. Which one has the most roadblocks to get to the SEC championship game? And although it's widespread thought that Alabama is probably the best team in college football, so they prove they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama has more roadblocks than Georgia does.
It's not a debate that the SEC is a tougher league than the ACC. I mean, or that Alabama's schedule isn't significantly harder than Clemson's schedule. That's not even
a good question. I mean, I get the question. I understand it. But
it's I wouldn't go that far. It's sometimes people just want to throw digs in there because they don't agree. It's kind of it's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah, it's well, I don't agree. The schedule that Alabama plays is way better. There's just no doubt about that. And then he mentioned so all right, well, what's the best division in football? And he mentioned it's the West in the Southeastern Conference. And you know what? Look, is it not? We don't know these answers until after the year. Or you could start to speculate as the year goes on and things like that. I mean, I certainly think that, like the Big Ten East probably could play their way into that conversation, depending on what happens. I mean, obviously Ohio State's in there. Mm-hmm. We saw what Indiana did last year.
Michigan, Penn State on his list, Phil Steele's list of most improved teams. Penn State is the number 1 most improved team. So it's possible. Right.
Yeah. And by the way,
don't be the second best conference. That's also expected, not just from him, but from a lot of other folks, that the Big Ten has another year back where it has been as the second best conference in the country.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too that that when you have these type of conversations of what's the best league, what's the best division, they're more for us, right? I mean, does it really matter? I mean, yes, it matters when it comes to if there's two teams whose record looks the same and you have to figure out who should be placed in the playoff and who shouldn't be and things like that. Okay, that's where it comes into play, and the committee looks at all this and they figure it out. But as it pertains to what our discussions, kind of surface level, I look at it and say, all right, I've told you this, I've said this before, I'll always stand by this. Okay, how good are the teams at the top? What about the blue collar teams? How good are they? And then how good are the teams at the bottom? It all matters. I think that when people, and Darren, you're very fair about this, but there are a lot of people that don't think about it this way. They look at like the SEC West and see in a year Alabama goes 11-1 and LSU goes 11-1, and Alabama lost to whoever, LSU, and LSU lost to Georgia or something like that. Oh, well, that's the best. That's the best division. Yeah, well, what the other 5 teams do? Are they any good? And so like when Phil Steele said, look, Arkansas is a team who returns 19 starters and they're more than likely predicted last in the division, that gives you thought going into the season. Okay, this might be the most competitive division in the sport. And that's why I say things like, well, let's just wait and see about the Big Ten East, for instance, because Rutgers has recruited their asses off. People don't realize this. They've got players up there.
Yep.
Maryland has recruited players. Am I proclaiming they're going to be winning the division? No, I don't think they're going to win the division. But could they play spoilers? Could they be 5, 6, 7 win teams? Maybe. And that's what strengthens these divisions and these leagues overall.
It's the conversation to have right now when we're still 6-ish weeks away from the start. It has to be based on things that versus things that you think. Right now, we know a lot more about the SEC West than we do about how much of a bounce back the Big Ten East is going to have. And that SEC West could fall flat on its face. That's completely possible also.
Absolutely.
Outside of Alabama. It's totally possible. But if you're going to have the conversation now that we're having, it's hard to put someone else up there and say, look, this is going to be a better division than the SEC West. The odds are the SEC West is there, but now we're at the point of, okay, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens. And then we can try and figure out, for comparison's sake, right? If you want to say this division's better, this league is better, fine. Let some stuff play out. But as of now, there's only so much stuff that you know. Yeah. And if JT Daniels doesn't play worth a damn for Georgia, we don't know a whole lot about them either, because that's a totally different team if that guy isn't who we think he's going to be on the other side.
Yeah, they're really darn good, but if JT Daniels doesn't play the way that JT Daniels needs to play in order to satisfy their expectation, which is we need to win a national championship here. We're watching all of our rivals around us like Alabama and Clemson do it. We need to do one here. Well, you can't do it without an elite quarterback. That's proven. So if he's not elite, it doesn't matter that they added Darion Kendrick. It doesn't matter that they've added Peyton Manning or whoever the hell else they've added. I know they've been active in the transfer portal. It doesn't matter. I mean, that kid has to play sensational football. The SEC East, I don't have a lot of faith in it. I just don't.
No, but Georgia would bring the rest of the league back in. If JT Daniels isn't what they hope he will be, and at least some level of what I think we expect him to be, then they bring the rest of that division right back into play.
Yeah, it would. In specific Florida, I think that it's going into the year, personally, I think it's very average, and they'll have to prove me wrong, and they might prove me right, or whatever. We'll see how it all works out, but I don't look at the SEC East and think, oh man, look how deep it is this year. I just don't see it. I see a lot of teams. I mean, I think that Carolina's got a chance to win 6 or 7 games. Doesn't mean that I think they will. I think they have a chance to. I think Missouri has a chance to. I think Tennessee probably has a chance to. I don't think that Vanderbilt has the chance to get to 6 or 7, but they probably have a chance to get 3 or 4, maybe 5. And, and then Georgia's the one team that I look at and say, there's no way they're not winning 10 games. I don't think Florida is like a shoe-in for 10 wins. I don't. They're going to have to probably battle to get there. 9-3 might be the Gators a great year, but not what they need to get in the playoff. Not at 9-3. No, you can't do that.
No, there's nothing in the East. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. The perception, the feel right now, and maybe we'll know more in fall camp, but you're not going to know that much more. You certainly won't know more coming out of media days. You'll just know how great everybody is. But it looks like it's Georgia and then a gap of some sort, not massive, but a gap, then Florida, and then kind of the rest of the division right there. It's really up to the SEC West and Georgia to carry the flag for the SEC this year. Because if the Big Ten has a bounce back as strong as it can be, there could very well be the scenario where I will have a lot of ammo to sit here in SEC country and say, hey, guys, the Big Ten's a lot better than the SEC this year. That scenario is very much in play.
I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I also thought it was interesting, when you ask a guy like Phil Steele, doesn't mean that he's always going to be right, but he certainly, has a lot more connections out there than we do. Who are the two teams in other leagues that could advance? And he basically said there's only one from the ACC unless there's a real surprise, and that's Clemson, obviously. But in the Big 12, it was Oklahoma and Iowa State, not Texas. And that's where Steve Sarkisian is, not Oklahoma State, Iowa State. Now, don't get me wrong. I know what Iowa State has done, in particular last year under Matt Campbell. I get it. You just wonder what type of staying power is there. I mean, are the Cyclones is this a South Carolina type-ish 10 through 13? Or is this, no, we've built the program and you know what, we're always going to be on pretty stable ground. I'd like to think it's probably more a similar Spurrier effect with Matt Campbell until we're proven otherwise. But nonetheless, they're a player.
It feels like this is Matt Campbell's doing. So is there staying power if he leaves, if he goes to the NFL, like it appears is what is at least on his mind? Is there staying power? That's hard to say right now. This year, they should be damn good. They really should be.
Absolutely. Let's see, had a couple other this is still the Clemson thing. Alabama will slaughter the bad SEC teams hands down.
Well, look, we'll see. The interesting thing with Alabama in terms of just being favored, Phil still had it as one of his notes. I didn't realize it was this long. If you think about it, it makes some sense. By the end of this year, at least getting into the playoffs, they will have been favored. Now, I'm not saying double digit, but they will have been favored in 92 consecutive games. 92. So they're entering the year with like 80. So it's wild. But that's where they are right now. But the SEC it's more competitive. They even if they're double digit favorites, they will be at least when they're playing folks like A&M, depending on the SEC championship game, that they're not as far ahead of the SEC as Clemson is ahead in the ACC, and that's not debatable.
No, yeah, it's not. It's absolutely, yeah. There's no question. There are much closer teams to Alabama in this league than over there in the ACC. But that's for another day. Real quick, I want to get to this Luke Doty thing. So Pro Football Focus ranks him like 125th out of 130 quarterbacks. I'm not exactly sure what their formula is. I'm not defending it. I'm not necessarily criticizing it. I'm just going to point out a couple of things here. They say they use these analytics and all these stuff. I don't know. Emory Jones, the quarterback at Florida, is ranked way ahead of him. Last year, 18 of 32 for 221 yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception. Did rush it 32 times for 217 yards and 2 TDs. Luke Doty was 43 of 71, 405 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Did have 3 starts. Carolina fans who continued to criticize Luke Doty have forgotten that he also only threw 4. Look there. 1, 2, 3, and 4 incompletions against Georgia, the second-ranked defense of the league, one of the best in the country, I might add. 18 of 22 in that start for 190 yards. He was the only offense that they had against the Dogs. And his, he had 3 starts as a true freshman. 14 of 23 in his first career start against Missouri. 18 of 22 in his second career start against Georgia. And then 11 of 25 for 85 yards, a touchdown, and a pick, and an awful night, cold night up in Lexington, in which the other half of the team had pretty much quit. So I'm not defending him. I don't know. Like, I've never – one of the things, and this is more – forget the pro football focus crap for a second, because I don't really care. Look, these people rate J.C. Horn as like the 10th best corner. He was the first corner to take. He's the first defensive player to go in the draft. So they don't really know everything that they think they know. But like, I've never seen, and I'm part of it, I've never seen a fan base that criticizes quarterbacks worse than South Carolina. Like I am. Does anybody not remember what we heard at the start of last year? It's all we heard. Well, Luke Doty needs to be playing. It doesn't need to be Jake Bentley. It doesn't need to be Ryan Helinski. It doesn't need to be Colin Hill. It needs to be Luke Doty. They saw Luke Doty. It doesn't need to be Luke Doty. It needs to be Jason Brown because he completed 4 passes in a spring game. I mean, and prior to that, it doesn't need to be this guy. It doesn't need to, it's never good enough. Like, it is, dude, I didn't realize we had so many quarterbacks coaches in this state. I was shocked to learn that.
It's the one position where fan bases will. I mean, and it's not just college. It's the NFL. It's college. It probably goes down to the high school ranks if you want to walk around those bleachers. Also, it's the quarterback spot. I promise you, there are fan bases who are spewing as much vitriol at their starting quarterback as South Carolina. I know for a fact,
certainly
the Penn State fans, when Clifford was struggling last year, and he did a lot, and the year before, right? There's constant beat down on Clifford, and it happens. Okay, let's go back to the example we were using before. Let's say JT Daniels isn't what he could be this year. Oh, he's going to get rained down upon him from Georgia fans because it's the quarterback position. You expect that you're going to have a Heisman Trophy winner. That's not right. But every fan base, if you want to win, you know you need a good quarterback. So your expectation of what's good is my guy good enough to win a national championship? If it's my guy Trevor Lawrence, is my guy 6'6" with a rocket? Well,
no.
There are other versions of good. You might not be like a generational quarterback, but you can still be good. You can still be good enough to take your team to a championship without being a generational quarterback.
No, I think a lot of South Carolina fans specifically look up the road. Clemson's had elite quarterbacks, and they see that, and they go, well, why can't we have that? Mm-hmm. Well, maybe they will. And there was a time where Carolina did have elite quarterbacks. Matter of fact, I think of a lot of them in my time. I mean, I sure like watching Steve Tanio play. I loved watching Connor Shaw. Yeah. Dylan Thompson had the best season in the history of the school, by the way. I mean, so, maybe that time's coming. I don't know, but my God, get off of his ass. I just don't understand it, especially for the section of people that goes, I saw him in the spring game. He ain't worth a damn. He shouldn't be playing. Did you see him against Georgia last year? What do you put more stock in? The 18 of 22 for 200 yards against one of the best defenses in the country in his second career start, or about 5 passes thrown in a spring game? I mean, honestly, come on, somebody answer the question. Nobody has an answer for that.
We don't know. We know marginally more about Doty. Marginally.
It's a great point by
than we do about Shane Beamer and his staff, right? So to throw him in some, hey, he's going to be great, or he's not going to be as good as somebody else, or even to put some expectations around him. I mean, you could break it down and you could say, his mechanics are this. Here's how he looked in that game. Okay. I still need a lot more to decide where I think I should even rate him or think about him. I'm not rating anybody, but how I would even place him and compare him to somebody else.
Just to have the conversation. Tim Frisbee I just saw, he responded, this is perfectly, this is how it should always be. Bottom line is the SE, and this should be everywhere. The South Carolina quarterback spot has to, quote, show me. Exactly. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That is actually everything right with that. Tim would know, he played college football. But like, there are so many people that it's not show me, it's, he's terrible. Mm-hmm. He's just not good. And then they see the Pro Football Focus. My God, we're in the SEC and we have the 125th ranked quarterback in the country. Yeah, by the people that rank J.C. Horn like the 10th best corner. Give me a break. Who cares what they say? So I mean,
you need more sample size, like a lot more sample size.
Yeah, the dude has 3 starts, like Craig said. He was moved to wide receiver to start the year last year. Breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Breathe. By the way, Bryce Young in his career at Alabama, 13 of 22 for 156 yards. He sucks. They're out. All based on numbers, baby. All right, got to hit our final timeout of the afternoon. Gene's probably going, what the hell are you doing? We're going to come back and welcome the 7-time Sports Writer of the Year from the Post and Courier, Gene Sapakoff, on the JB and Goldwater Show.
This is Mike Mazzell for Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road with exciting news. It's springtime and we're playing ball. Most dealerships don't have any inventory, but at Stokes Volkswagen we do. So we're playing ball on every new Volkswagen in stock. Every new Volkswagen available with zero down. Qualified buyers can sign and drive with interest-free financing for 60 months. Remember, Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road is the fastest, easiest way to sell your car and get the most money for your trade. Plus, we'll take any trade in any condition, paid off or not. Is your credit in a slump?
Strike two.
If you've got $500 down and you make at least $2,000 per month, our lenders can get you approved. So if you want to strike out, that's okay. But if you want to hit a home run and save on a new Volkswagen, come see us today at Stokes Volkswagen on Ashley Phosphate Road or StokesVW.com.
$1,666 per month per $1,000 borrowed for 60 months at 0% APR with zero down. Plus tax tag. Includes $499.50 administration fee. Subject to BCI credit approval. Expires month end.
Peace and love at Stokes Speed Dub.
Wando Power Equipment, the trusted home of Hustler zero-turn residential and commercial mowers. There is nobody more trusted in South Carolina than our friends from Wando Power Equipment. They've been providing elite commercial and residential service for over 30 years. Landscape Services have turned to their selection of Hustler zero-turn mowers like the Raptor. Bigger, stronger, faster, and the most durable Raptor Hustler has ever designed. Located on Daniel Island and online at wandopower.com. Wando Power Equipment, owned by the Price family, the home of Hustler zero-turn mowers, rentals, service, and specializing in family and friendship.
Shrimping season's back. That means local caught shrimp. That's right, local caught shrimp back on the menu at the Dog and Duck. All 3 locations, Bell Hall, Park West, and Clemens Ferry Road, now featuring once again local caught hand-breaded shrimp, plus other daily specials like the Game Day Burger every Wednesday, Rib Night on Friday, rotating taps all the time, and all the TVs you can possibly imagine for whatever you want to watch. The Dog and Duck in Bell Hall, Park West, and on Clemens Ferry Road.
What's up, everybody? This is South Carolina singer-songwriter Patrick Davis, and I might live in Nashville, Tennessee now, but guess what? I can always keep up with the news back in South Carolina because I've got the JB and Goldwater Show. Thank you, JB and Darren, for being live, loud, and awesome.
You're welcome, Patrick. 1:37 Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back to the JB and Goldwater Show. Real quick, another update from the draft. A young man I just mentioned a few moments ago, Julian Bosnick, now selected in the 16th round by the San Francisco Giants. Don't ask me what he's going to do, but if you did, I would lean towards you're probably going to see Julian Bosnick back in a Gamecock uniform in 2022. We will see. By the way, also, as it pertains to that pro football focused list, Darren, Emory Jones, who I mentioned at Florida, and I'm not disparaging this kid. I think he's probably a pretty good young man, and I like him at quarterback. But I've seen him play, and I've seen Luke Doty play, and I've seen a bunch of other teams or quarterbacks in this league play. And you mean to tell me that Luke Doty's the 125th guy according to PFF, and Emory Jones is 14th? Goodness gracious! None of this crap means anything. So hopefully fans will just forget about it. But I hope they listen to this guy, Gene Sapakoff. He's a sports writer of the year for a reason, and we've got him on. Hey, Gene.
How can you guys ask me any questions about college football today when you've had Phil Steele on your show, who knows more about college football than, most 500 other experts combined? And I know that guy, I think his slogan's like college football 365 days a year, which means, and I believe that on Christmas Eve, he might be opening one present and having some eggnog, and he's also breaking down the New Mexico State offensive line.
And you know how well he knows his stuff? Because anytime you hear him interviewed, it was true today, and it's true anytime he's anywhere. I don't know how much is actually in front of him, because he pulls every answer immediately and detailed. The only way to do this is if you're living this life, like every waking minute of your life.
It's true.
You are so right, Darren. And I appreciate like SEC centric and ACC centric guys and people that know both leagues, but most people that are like in the SEC or ACC media, they can't really tell you too much about the defensive backs at Washington State. But dang, if he cannot tell you about everything.
Yeah, he is. One day I'd like to have a conversation with him and ask him about like the 2007 magazine. See how much of it he remembers.
Oh my gosh. I mean, his head might explode.
Well, it's true. That's true. All right, Gene. Well, welcome aboard. So we got a wide range of stuff to get to. Next time we speak with you, Shane Beamer will have already stepped up and off of the podium at SEC Media Days. So, but let's start with baseball here. It's a great week for the state of South Carolina. The last couple of days, we've seen a ton of names already selected today, even more coming off of the board. This is kind of what we're used to, Gene, seeing names selected. I know that it didn't end where Clemson and Carolina fans or Coastal fans or whomever wanted it to end in Omaha, but at the same time, we're used to this time of the year when you see a lot of guys drafted. Evaluate what you've seen thus far in the 2021 Major League Baseball draft.
Well, from the college perspective, I mean, yeah, they both had some ups and downs there. I mean, Cooper Kinney, South Carolina, probably didn't expect him to go where he did. Going to be interesting to see what happens with Bubba Chandler, and I'm writing about that for tomorrow at postandcourier.com. I mean, I think Clemson fans were just jumping for joy. Oh, he didn't get drafted in the first couple of rounds, and middle of the first round, I tweeted out that there's such a thing as, underslot and overslot, and lo and behold, the Pirates grab him in the third, and it's pretty clear that they're going to go underpay and on their first and second pick so they can give Bubba Chandler and other guys more money, which is smart for the Pirates. I think Clemson needs to get their act together and make it clear to this young man that he could be one of the national stars of NIL. I mean, he's playing two sports. He's from nearby Georgia. He's got the marquee first name of the South, Bubba. I mean, the guy could be representing Waffle House tomorrow if he gets on board. So that's what Clemson's got to try to sell to him, but it frankly doesn't look good.
That's a great point, Gene. It's the first time ever in the history of college athletics that this has become a part of the conversation, stay or go, not just because of the finances that you're being offered professionally, but that you could be offered as a collegiate athlete. How do you think this continues to evolve?
I think it is fascinating, and that there will be guys that this comes into play, especially draft picks at, high profile baseball schools, including South Carolina and Clemson, but then two sport guys too with football. And, the other fascinating thing about this draft, and I don't know if you read J.J. Cooper's really good column in Baseball America, but with the crackdown on grip-enhancing substances in the major leagues, scouts over the last few weeks were freaking out all over the state here and all over the South and all over the country, wondering, is my guy that I've turned in the really good report on, does he use this? Does he use that? Does he use nothing? Because he's about to get shaken down when he gets into professional baseball, and we're not going to know now how that spin rate plays without whatever he's been using in high school or college.
Interesting. That is very interesting. I did not read that, but I will certainly put that on the agenda to do tonight after I finally get the kids in bed if they don't scream their heads off. Gene, anything that has stood out, even earlier, Darren mentioned that Daniel Brooks, his name has not come off the board. He's a local star. Maybe it looks like he might be headed to the College of Charleston. What has stood out to you as it pertains to our kids?
As far as Daniel Brooks goes, I mean, I love him. I spent some time with him last summer and his family talking to him. And I think he's going to be a really good player. I think for pitchers and, some of the top agents in baseball just like openly advise high school pitchers, you're much better off going through college and coming out. So I think he's going to be okay. But clearly what happened with Daniel Brooks is that his advisor, this doesn't take an expert, asked for a huge number, and teams are not going to waste picks anymore. They're just really frugal. So I'm not saying he asked for this, but let's say he asked for $1 million or $800,000 or 1.3 or 600,000. Well, and if you're the team and you value him at like 575,000, you don't draft him and then start negotiating. You believe that that's what he's going to do or go to college. You don't want to waste that pick. But hey, good for Daniel Brooks and good for Chad Holbrook and the Cougars and Cougar fans. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. But I mean, that's at one of the more exciting players coming into CFC that I can recall in recent years.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I mean, you think about that. South Carolina has some guys that they've avoided losing to the draft. Not Will Kinney, certainly, and not some of the top players from this year's team, but they do have some other guys that they've avoided. But I think the two most notables are Daniel Brooks and Will Taylor to Monty Lee at Clemson. Those are two young men that could change the program quickly.
Absolutely. I think Will Taylor's people, relatively speaking, what I just said about Daniel Brooks gave him an extremely high number. And I think he really wants to play football. He obviously loves baseball, but that's going to be fun and exciting for him. And there's another guy. He's a two-way guy, and he's from the state, being from, Irmo, and name, image, and likeness. I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him too. He's from Columbia, but he's going to Clemson. I mean, plays two different sports, is really good. So you want to invest in that guy, I would say, if you're going to invest in some athlete at Clemson.
I tell you what, I'm not taking a shot at the Tigers or anything, Gene, but to think about it this way is unique and very interesting. The depth of and maybe security of Clemson's quarterback room this year has all been hinging on the Major League Baseball draft. Did you think we'd be saying that? Oh, I don't know, about this time last year?
No, it's fascinating, interesting, and potentially very dangerous for Clemson.
Yeah.
Because as much as I think Hunter Helms is a great kid and all that, I mean, you're trying to win a national championship. I'm not sure if you could win a couple games if you had to with a guy like him, who, again, is a real nice guy and he's played some, but it is the weakest the Clemson position has been at quarterback in a long time. And I mean, to give you an idea of how that is, I mean, Phil Steele is, again, tremendous at ranking things. And this isn't ranking DJ Uiagalelei, but just the Clemson quarterback room as a whole is, like as a position ranking, is fourth in the ACC. That's, not what you'd expect, because I think Uiagalelei is a Heisman Trophy candidate, but that's about the depth.
That's a great point. Gene Sapakoff on Twitter at Sapakoff. All right, let's talk some Major League Baseball, and then I want to get to media days for both Clemson and Carolina next week. What'd you think about the home run derby last night, Gene? Do you like the setup and assess what you saw there?
Honestly, didn't watch any of the home run derby. I know that Alonso was great. I wish Ohtani would have won. I think it would have been exciting, but I think it was just kind of silly to, Coors Field. We're not going to use a humidor. It just seemed like way too silly for me, let alone the fact that game shouldn't even be in Denver.
Balls were flying out, though.
I'm from Denver. So I mean, and I'm saying, that was ridiculous, but whatever.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that agree with you on that. It should have been in Atlanta. That did strike me last night when they were talking about Hank Aaron on the broadcast. I'm like, could you imagine what this would be if they were actually in Atlanta right now? What about Ohtani, though? You mentioned him. We've never seen this before. I mean, the guy's in the home run derby. He's going to lead off tonight. Oh, and he's also the starting pitcher. We've never seen this before. His name is being mentioned with Babe Ruth, Gene. Babe Ruth. It's an amazing story.
So, JB, I've been following baseball since I was a kid. I started getting interested in the 1969 Mets, and then those great teams in the A's in the 70s. I'm having trouble finding the second most exciting player that I've ever read about, heard about, or watched on TV. I guess, I don't know, Ricky Henderson or something, because he could hit homers, steal bases, and he was kind of dynamic. But I have no idea who's the second most exciting player. But this guy is absolutely fascinating. It's ridiculous. I mean, I would pay a lot of money to see him play, and I get in games free, but I would pay a lot of money to see him play, and I really wish, that he would play the Braves. I think they came to Tampa earlier in the year, and I'm sorry I missed it.
Do you think that his profile would be raised, or his platform would be larger to stand on if he was playing on the East Coast?
Yeah, and specifically with certain teams, but yeah, it would be. And I know what you're saying, the times of the games.
Yeah.
No doubt about it, because this guy, it's just ridiculous. And I mean, he was so built up, and then he had some struggles, and kind of had the arm injury and stuff. But boy, this year that's what they were talking about, that off season, in which he was coming from Japan to the U.S. and all the bids on him and stuff. And wow, I mean, it's just fascinating. And I've not been in a clubhouse with him or anything like that, but he just seems like a really nice, kind of humble guy.
So there was a picture last night, may have been from a game before too. He's in the dugout, like playing games, trying to balance a ball on his arm, and there's all this other stuff going on. It's like he's a kid playing a game that almost, it seems, means more to the people around him than it does to him, even as he's doing all this. But I was having a conversation yesterday about if we could see more of this, because even today, even in the high school game today, we have superstar kids who are a pitcher and excel at the plate. Can this become something that tips the scales backwards a little bit, and we see more American kids in college and in the professional ranks maybe going both ways?
I think so. You're seeing some guys that, in the drafts, and Bubba Chandler's a pitcher and a shortstop. Maybe he'll get a chance at both. And, the Braves have drafted a guy, this Braden Montgomery guy. And I mean, there's some, Brendan McKay, the guy that came from Louisville that's in the Rays system, maybe he'll get a shot at it. But the other thing, Darren, is just maybe we need to try to tap into international markets more. And I'm not even talking about just Asia, but other places. If there's talent like this available, I mean, you got to try to find that and do a better job of finding it, identifying it, growing baseball, heck, growing football too, and basketball. But because that's where it could really just explode.
I wonder if he reserves a seat on the bench in the dugout like Ichiro used to do. Did I ever tell you the story of Ichiro and Smoke, Gene?
No, give me that one.
Yeah, when he first got to Seattle after being traded from Texas, I can't remember how it happened, whether he was coming back from it bad or something, but it was first game, walks in, sits down, and a couple of his teammates were sitting around him, staring at him kind of weird, and he looked at him, and they're like, "Hey, dude, you're sitting in Ichiro's seat." And he looked down at he said, "It's a bench." What are you talking about? And they said, "Yeah, it's where Ichiro seats." And he said he looked down to the other end of the dugout, and there was Ichiro staring at him like, who does this cat think he is? So he slid about 2 feet over, and Ichiro came and sat next to him, and they didn't talk.
That's a great story.
Sounds like a great guy.
He just decided that was his seat on the bench. I guess he liked the view from there, but yeah. Welcome to Seattle. We suck, and that's Ichiro's seat. All right, Gene, let's get to media days. This year, Carolina's head coach is going to be on day one, Shane Beamer. They haven't announced who will ride with him just yet. I don't know if it's going to be Kevin Harris or JJ Anibari or who, but we do know that Shane Beamer is going to be over there next Monday. What are you most looking forward to in his appearance at media days, and also in general in covering the SEC?
Well, as far as the South Carolina team appearance, I like, and I think those are the two guys they're going to bring. And I mean, there's a few other possibilities, like, I don't know, maybe Parker White or a certain tight end, perhaps. But no, I think you've got it there. I'd like to hear what they say about the vibe in that Gamecock Nation, locker room, and, volunteer workouts and the weight workouts and sports performance workouts they've been having. I really want to hear what they say. I know Shane's going to just ooze positivity as he has been, but we've heard a little bit more from him than for the players. So yeah, I just want to see if I can put the Gamecock sort of vibe in a capsule and see what that's like. And I have pretty high hopes for what they're going to say. And hey, words don't matter, and talking season doesn't matter, but it's you can kind of get a feel at SEC Media Days where these teams are as far as just kind of an attitude and an approach. And I think that matters to an extent, at least to get your preseason drills going in the right direction.
Gene, if we reverse track here and we go back to when all of this was unfolding, hiring Coach Beamer to South Carolina, Darren and I repeat it around here a lot. Pay attention to your local sources. They're talking to the right people. They know what's going on out there. No offense to the national media boys, but this isn't Alabama. This isn't Ohio State. This isn't Clemson. They don't have great interest in this. They're just passing along information that they get. And it turns out that pretty much all the local guys were right. And then on top of that, everybody in this state got to kind of peel those layers back slowly with Coach Beamer, and he let everybody into the office. And we've all, over the last 6 or 7 months, had a little bit of a get-to-know-you type session with Shane and his staff, and it's become a lot more comfortable. This is the first real opportunity that Shane Beamer has to maybe take some of that comfort to the rest of the national guys. And I'm not going to mention anybody by name, and I'm not saying this disparagingly to anybody, but none of them have been able to see inside the program and what has been going on here like you have, or David, or us, or whomever. What do you think that means to Gamecock football now that this is going to be their first opportunity? Oh, by the way, also on national television.
I think it means a lot, and you look no further than the recruiting rankings, and it's like, water coming up in the bathtub, the way they've been rising up there here lately, just these last few weeks. So obviously he knows how to sell. And look, the guy's been at Oklahoma, Georgia, Mississippi State, Tennessee, and he's just been everywhere. So he really knows. And oh, by the way, he was at South Carolina with Steve Spurrier, the old ball, the ball coach, so head ball coach. Yeah. So anyway, I think he really is going to be comfortable in this spot. I interviewed Shane Beamer on the field I almost said the Georgia Dome, but at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, like right before Georgia was going to play Alabama in the national championship game, and it was like he was going to play. He's a coach getting ready to go into this big game. He's on offense, Saban's on defense, and all those guys. And it's like he's going to go play tennis at the country club. He's just so cool, relaxed, ready, confident, and he's going to sell South Carolina football, and Gamecock Nation will be very proud of him. Now, how does that work on the field? We don't know yet. But going into the field, it looks good.
That's right. Yeah, you got to win. Dabo will be at Media Days next week in the ACC as well. By the way, the Big 12 starts theirs tomorrow. So, Gene, I think what's most intriguing about this year's Media Day sessions everywhere across the country, yes, we have the cartoonists who show up and ask you who has the longest nose on the team and things like that. But there are major issues in college athletics this year that all these coaches are going to have opportunities to answer. And I think that Dabo might be one of the 2 or 3 coaches that everybody wants to hear the most from as it pertains to name, image, and likeness, the transfer portal, the college football playoff, and things of that nature. How do you anticipate all of these conversations unfolding from different coaches, from the Beamers of the world all the way up to the Dabos, who certainly are respected, and when they speak, folks are listening. They're anxious to hear their answers.
Well, you're right about Dabo Swinney. I mean, he's become one of the spokespersons, guys, not just for college football, but as Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, and these guys ease out of basketball. He's going to be, along with Nick Saban, and I don't know who the heck else, one of the top spokesmen for all college athletics. He's well aware of that. He's had some, I won't say minefields, but some stumbles, before in the certain issues, but I think he's going to be comfortable with addressing name, image, and likeness, and the transfer portal, and pretty much any other issue that would come up. The ACC has some really good coaches. I mean, obviously Mac Brown, David Cutcliffe, and Dino Babers, and these guys. But again, we're talking season. I want to talk performance, and somebody in the ACC, please emerge to playoff contender status. They just need that so much. It's a good league depth-wise. It's not a good league at the top. And we just need desperately another contender. Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, NC State, Miami, step up. My candidate there would probably be Miami, but who the heck knows?
Everybody down there has an NIL deal. Yeah, I'm really interested to see where this goes, because I'm with you. I want to hear them talk football. I want to know about their teams. I'm excited to see the kids on the field. But you know what's coming, Gene. You know exactly what's coming. It's going to be NIL, college football playoff, and all the extracurricular stuff. And there are going to be guys like Nick Saban who say, that's enough. I want to talk about my football team. So the tone of some of these conversations next week, you'll have a front row seat to a lot of this. Could get a little interesting.
Yeah, and just see how many times on any network or show or whatever, Nick Saban says our players have to find value in that. There has to be value. There must be value in how you practice. There must be value in how you get up and have a muffin. You have to have value in how you go to the bathroom. That's what he always says. So it'll be fun.
There's value in money in my wallet too from an NIL deal.
Exactly.
Gene, you've got to write a column about. You got to write a drinking game column, a media days drinking game, for all of us to play along with next week, man.
Yeah. Hey, the coolest thing about the SEC media days and the SEC in general, and I'm sure you'll address this with the great Bill Steele, but the guys with the two greatest names in college football are returning. Bumper Pool at Arkansas and Smoke Monday at Auburn.
That's true. Yeah, Darren, what were you thinking? You had one job, address the name, the all-name team.
To be honest, I just learned the name Bumper Pool like a second ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He is good. He's good. Look him up. Like, he's going to be on one of the top SEC tacklers or something. And Smoke Monday. I mean,
I know that.
You can't get better than that.
No. Yeah, Michael Flint had called me early last year and kept saying this Bumper Pool, and I was like, dude, finally, I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, have you not seen him play? I thought he was talking about a video game.
The real Bumper Pool is an awesome game, but that's another day.
Yeah.
Gene, by the way, I want to say thank you on behalf of myself, honestly, but just bravo on the Scott Foxhall column. He is a guy who deserves everything he can possibly get from this state. He's given so much back to it in baseball, and we owe it to him to pay attention to his career, just like Chris Lemonis. That was a wonderful read that was out just a couple of days ago. Very well done.
Well, thanks, JB. And yeah, Lemonis and Foxhall, that story doesn't get much better for us. Citadel College of Charleston combo there in Stark Vegas.
Yep. It's awesome. What are we looking for in the next couple of days? We know what we're looking for next week with media days. What are we going to see before then?
Yeah, well, we got David Cloninger, wrapping up the draft, and I'm talking about the Bubba Chandler situation and whether or not Clemson could possibly beat the odds and prime away from the Pirates. And David Cloninger writing a little bit about some Gamecock basketball, and then just jumping into that SEC and ACC stuff that me and Mr. DC will be all over.
Nice.
Thank you, man. I know it's going to be a busy next week and a half, 2 weeks for you, but football is right around the corner. We told Phil Steele he is now dubbed the groundhog of college football, very similar to the groundhog in February. Spring's around the corner. When Phil pops his head out of the water, we know that football's here. So can't wait.
It's so true. That is a great nickname for Mr. Steele.
He liked it, so maybe might have to copyright that thing. Thanks, Gene. Have a wonderful week.
Later.
Thanks, guys.
There you go, Gene Sapakoff on Twitter @Sapakoff. A little bit overtime today, but here's the good news. Darren and I own this thing, and we can do whatever the hell we want to do. That's why we're still here. All right. By the way, I know we're like 18 days away from it, but Dog and Duck has a major party coming up on the 31st.
20th anniversary party. Yeah, end of the month, last day of the month. All 3 locations. 20 years of Dog and Duck goodness. You can get a game day burger for $5 and a whole lot of other specials. A local beer has been brewed just for them. We'll talk a lot about that. It's coming up at the end of the month.
Well, tomorrow's Brown Bag Day over at the Dog.
Yeah, it is.
Sweet. All right, we're out of time. Thanks to Phil Steele, Gene Sapakoff, Darren Goldwater, all of you for watching and listening. Guess who's back tomorrow? JC Sherbert with us on the JB and Goldwater Show, driven by Stokes Volkswagen. See you then.